All right, good evening. I want to welcome everyone to the special call City Council meeting, 2023 Budget Workshop, public hearing budget number 1, public hearing number 3, millage and adoption of millage rate. I'll call this meeting to order, and I will look for a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Carter to adopt the agenda as presented and a second from Ms. Marchman. All in favor? All right, that's unanimous. Okay, so we will open this up for public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in public comments? All right, seeing no public comments, I will close the public comment portion of the meeting and we'll move into finance. Ms. Hallman, Jennifer Hallman. And I will ask you to present again for probably the third or fourth time the 2023 proposed budget, and then we'll have a public hearing for the millage rate, and we'll probably move to adopt the millage rate. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Teresa's going to drive the presentation, so I'll be saying next when I want you to change the slides. We'll start off by what is included in the digest. The digest is made up of real property, personal property, motor vehicles, mobile homes, timber, and heavy-duty equipment. You take all of those items, and that becomes your gross digest. You subtract out all the different types of exemptions on each of those categories, and then you come up with your net digest. This is the ad, one of the ads that had to be placed in the paper. It's the current 2022 tax digest and 5-year history of the levy. It's a public notice letting the citizens know when the millage rate will be set and what it's being proposed at. And the last column to the right, the 2022 column, I do want to pay special attention to the very last row on the last column where it's 19.3% as far as net tax percentage increase. While that is the amount of additional revenue the city will receive, that is not the amount of the tax increase. That $876,916 is the total amount of additional revenue we'll receive from reassessment or inflationary growth, as well as new growth in the digest. And we'll go over what those amounts are in a few more slides. Next. As far as Villa Rica's 2022 gross digest, we're just over $1 billion, with 51% being residential, 26% being industrial, and 20% being commercial. A small sliver is 1.87% of other categories, which is your utilities, motor vehicles, ag, conservation, mobile homes, timber, and heavy equipment. Next. As you know, Villa Rica is in 2 different counties. We're in Douglas County and Carroll County. This is just taking the Douglas County side. Villa Rica's net digest is 41% in Douglas County, and the total net digest is just over $355 million, and we saw a 28.26% change in total. We saw a 19% change in commercial, a 34% change in industrial, and almost a 30% change in residential on the Douglas County side. Next. For Carroll County, Villa Rica's net digest is 59%, with the digest in 2022 for Villa Rica being $511 million, with a 13.77% net change. With commercial change just over 4%, and industrial change 20%, and so did residential. So when you take those 2 previous slides, combine them together, that makes Villa Rica's total gross digest, gross exemptions, and then our net total digest is $867 million. As far as net digest, and had a net increase of 19.3%. This is just a recap talking about the types of growth that Villa Rica, or each digest, regardless of municipal entities, experience. Inflationary growth in Douglas County for Villa Rica's digest was 11.62%. In Carroll County, it was 7.4%. So meshing those together for Villa Rica is 9% inflationary growth. New growth in Douglas County's side of Villa Rica's digest was 16.6%. Carroll County was 6%. So a total for Villa Rica was 10%. And then you can see the totals we've already discussed. Total for Douglas County was 28%. Carroll County was 13%. So total Villa Rica was 19.3%. Again, talking about the types of growth or changes in the digest, you have the reassessment inflationary growth. That's exactly what it is. It's just based upon the reassessments of property. And that is the part of the digest that we have to calculate a rollback millage rate. And we'll go in detail about that in another slide or two. The next is your new growth or other changes in the digest. So that's new buildings, new homes, improved property on your home or in buildings. So those two is what, those two categories equal your total digest changes or your total digest growth. Next. So breaking that down, you can see that at the very bottom, we'll start there, that for Villa Rica, we had 9.1% of inflationary growth. And what that means dollar-wise, as far as revenue generated for Villa Rica, that was $413,437. The new growth is 10.2%, and that generated $463,512. So those two amounts combined is what we have to advertise as the amount of increased revenue that we will get. So it's both the inflationary growth and the new growth. But looking at the value of a mill, in 2021 last year, the value of a mill was just over $727,000. So that means for every 1 mill you levy, you generate $727,000. For 2022, the value of 1 mill is $867,000. Next. So going back to the reassessment and inflationary growth, like I said, state law requires the calculation of a rollback millage rate to offset any inflationary increases to the digest. That is the millage rate that you have to start off with, that if you decide that you're going to go above that millage rate, even if you choose to maintain the same millage rate, the state requires you to advertise it as an increase. So what you do is you take the inflationary growth, oops, that's okay. There you go. You take the inflationary growth, you divide it by the 2022 net digest, and you multiply that times your prior year millage to get your millage rollback equivalent. So those numbers for Villa Rica was 66 million divided by 867 million times our millage rate of last year of 6.25. That gives us a rollback of 0.477. So then you take the prior year's millage rate at 6.25, you roll back 0.477 to come to your 2022 rollback millage rate of 5.773. Staff is recommending to maintain the same millage rate as we had last year, which is 6.250 mills, which also means not rolling back to the 5.773. That is an 8.26% increase. And again, it would generate $413,000 in additional revenue. As you know, we are at budget time, so we're seeing the needs of what departments have requested, and even being able to fund some of the, or proposing to fund some of the request based upon maintaining a 6.25 millage rate. We still have around $10 million worth of unfunded requests. So that's why staff is recommending to maintain the last year's millage rate at 6.25. And that is it. Oh, I'm sorry, millage rate schedule. This is the last public hearing. We had two back on August 23rd. So this will be public hearing number 3, and after this public hearing, we would like to ask for y'all to adopt a millage rate so that I can get all the documents to the tax commissioner so they can get it ready for the Department of Revenue so they can begin levying. sending
Okay.
out tax bills.
All right, council, does anyone have any questions for Jennifer before we do a public hearing? Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Let me open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak regarding the millage rate? Sir, would you state your name and address for the record? We'll give you 3 minutes.
Michael Young, 9634 Coastal Point Drive, Villa Rica, and that's in Mirror Lake. I've got a pretty nice house. It went up 20%, pretty much around what everybody else's house in my neighborhood went up. That was a $172 increase. $15 a month. 3 McDonald's sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits a month. Villa Rica has had really, really great progress in the last couple of years. And I am disinclined to derail that progress for 3 breakfast sandwiches a month. So I would encourage you to keep the millage rate.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in public comments for this public hearing on the millage rate? Okay. Seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing for the millage rate. I'll revert back to staff and council. Staff, do you have any other remarks on this before we move into a discussion on the millage rate? Anybody?
Yes, sir.
Tom? Sarah? Okay. All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Council, do you have any questions for Jennifer or anybody else on staff? Okay. All right. So we will move to the adoption of the millage rate, and I will recognize any council member who would like to be recognized. Mr. Carter. Not for a motion, sir. I will let you make the motion first, but first for just some discussion.
Okay.
Would you like to have some discussion?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. I will recognize you for that, though.
Okay.
Go
I
ahead.
appreciate that, Mayor.
Yes, sir. But let's first
You're a
have some
generous
discussion.
mayor.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have gotten a lot of input from the public, and it's not from my ward. It's coming from all over the city. And it seems to be coming from the people that are stuck on fixed income, that are fighting the inflation rate, because if you go to the gas station, gas up, you're going to notice right away prices are up. If you go to the grocery store and get groceries, you're going to notice the prices are up. If you go out and eat, those prices up. No matter what you do or go, you're going to find that the prices have gone up. So the people on a fixed income are having to manage it differently, having to figure out what to pay, what they can pay. You know, utility rates are up. Some hours aren't up yet, but power rates gone up. So that seems to be the problem that I'm hearing from the public is there's a lot of people out there on fixed income. Now, if they're on fixed Social Security, they'll get a raise in January, but they got to make it from here to January. So that's the input I'm getting is they need a break. They don't need to have it piled on top of them. They're having trouble now making ends meet. That's my input.
All right, thank you, sir. Anyone else want to be recognized for comments? All right, Ms. McPherson.
Okay, I've also had a good amount of feedback, but I will also say that a lot of my constituents, some of them may wish they were on fixed income. It can be a disadvantage, but for some people, depending on what that fixed income is, at least it's fixed. I've also got constituents that they're trying to raise their children and everything else. It's not fixed. They're just trying to pay everything that costs more right now. When you see that the budget's down 16%, and Jennifer's been very good about explaining that the vast majority of that is due to the American Rescue Plan funds that we got, the $6 million that we received over a 2-year period. And when you look at what people are going to pay on property, you have to also realize that a lot of people, nobody, well, a lot of times they have multiple taxes that they pay. They don't just have the city of Villa Rica, they also have their county taxes. Many people also have education taxes on there. So when they look at their tax bill, they have a combination of a number of different entities that are collecting from them. And when it comes to property tax, let's also look at some of the other streams that Villa Rica has of revenue coming in. Now, I'm going to It's going to take me a minute, but you know what? People are paying this, and they have a right to know this. Okay, so for Carroll County side, we are estimate up 290,000 from the 22 budget. This is on local option sales tax. So that's up 15%. On the Douglas County side, we expect to be up 183,970 from the 22 budget, up 11%. On license and permitting, we have an increase in the budget of $673,350, up 121%. Hotel motel tax increase expected to be 101,153. In comparison to the 22 budget, up 31%. These are all revenue streams. Occupational tax, revenues expected to be up 80,000. I'm not going to do all of them. This is just a sample, okay? Recreation and Pine Mountain, kudos to them. Revenue is up 68,000, and that's due to increased programs, so thank you to those employees. Building permits, increased revenue expected to be up 697,000, up 179%. And the last couple, water tap fees, increase of 370,900, up, is that 95%? I'm trying to read my scribble notes here. Sewer, 1,805,000 and some change, up 74%. These are all, aside from property tax, these are all revenue streams that we also receive to put on the business of the city. And so I would just say that this has nothing to do, deciding on this millage rate, whether we went with a rollback, has nothing to do with what's called kicking the can down the road, and very overused. I wish we could come up with something else. That is not at all what we would be doing if we did not collect the inflated value on property tax. We could still get all the property tax that we got from everybody, last year, and then get the new growth and any improvements. You get a vacant lot that a house is on and that sort of thing now. We can get all that new growth because personally, I'm not getting a whole lot of additional services from what I got last year. And so all of us have I believe that most of us have unnaturally inflated values on property. And so personally, I know we're not making a motion. Personally, I'd like to see us roll back all the way, which still lets us get all the new stuff, just not the inflated values. People are paying inflated values on everything. And lastly, we received thousands of dollars in CARES funding, and then we received $6 million over a 2-year period. What would we be doing if we hadn't gotten that $6 million? We'd still function, we'd still be carrying on, we'd still be fixing things like we were. But we were able to apply that to very critical infrastructure with water and sewer. And I'm curious as to anyone that would not be willing to not take more from people on their inflated values. If we got $20 million to the city of federal money, would we still be taking that inflated value? I'd guess that there's probably a good number that still would. So I'm just wondering, how much money do we have to have pouring in before we are willing to give property owners a break?
All right, anybody else? Miss McCoy. I almost did.
I know, it's
Go
easy
ahead.
It's easy to get
There's a lot of
confused.
M's up here.
Okay. Let me gather my thoughts. I had them for a second, then you confused me when you messed up my name. First off, okay. Okay, first of all, there are different revenue streams, but there are only certain things we can, it's not a free-for-all in a one big pot. There are only certain things we can use with grant funds. There are only certain things we could use with the ARPA and the CARES based on, we couldn't just do a free-for-all. You can't, some money you can't pay for salaries, but you can pay capital expenditures. So there are different revenue streams, but not all the expenses come out of it. With that being said, if I'm understanding Jennifer correctly, she said the increase from inflationary was 413,437. We're proposing to give our employees for inflation and stuff a 5% COLA, which comes up to 361,524. That's the majority of the inflationary part. So with that being said, I understand inflation is horrible right now. I understand we're bracing for a recession. I've had constituents reach out to me, constituents with fixed incomes, and like right now, I'm technically on a fixed income because it's all child support and alimony. But anyway, I was saying is that our workers are trying to feed their families. They need their 5%. They need a 5% increase. We're trying to keep people that they need an increase. We need to show them that we care and we know what they're going through. So also. I lost my train of thought again. But anyway, it's not frivolous money that we're spending, but the unfortunate thing about it is it's not stuff the public can see. The public can't see the improvements that we're doing to water and sewer. The public, it's hard to say we're planning when we're planning for 5 years ahead, and things may change in the meantime. But what I'm saying is it's not fiscally responsible. Ms. McPherson talks about kicking the can down the road. The can has been kicked to us, and it is our responsibility to fix it. We have millions of dollars of improvements into the sewer plant. We also have a balance on the sewer plant isn't paid off, and it's been something like 20 years. We aren't doing this frivolously. We aren't putting there's a lot of stuff we want to hear. Dog park. I would like a dog park. I have 2 dogs. But the sewer's working. The water's working. They're coming into your house. We have roads. Punkintown Road needs to get done. We need resurfacing. We need repaving, and the sidewalks on Connors Road need to be done. It's not necessary. It's some things that you might see, but it's some things you might not. And we have to keep those wheels running so that we're efficient. And so that's why. And then my thing I was going to say first but forgot was that while everybody else is dealing with inflation, we're dealing with inflation too. We're having higher cost goods and services because it's the trickle down. So we have to plan for that too. This is I don't like it. I don't want people to have to pay more taxes, but it's the responsible thing to do.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to be recognized?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, Mr. Momtahan.
Yeah, so the inflation, the city is not immune. The city, like any entity, is not immune from inflation. It costs our guys more money to fill up their tanks for the squad cars. It costs them more money for the trucks, for the building inspectors. I think we're all having to deal with the inflation. And like Ms. McCoy pointed out, we're also proposing to make adjustments for inflation to help out our employees within this budget. Personally, in my law practice, actually was 79 letters I signed yesterday informing my existing clients that I'm going to have to raise rates on them. And that's because of inflation. That's inflation in what I have to pay for utilities and so forth in my office. That's inflation to keep my staff competitive pay. That's inflation because my legal research software goes up in price. My case management software has gone up in price. So I have to keep up with that. No one's immune to it. We're all having to pay for it. And so I don't see how it's unreasonable that we, at this time of uncertainty, that it may actually be a good idea to maintain the millage rate where it's at. Because by doing that, I think we brace ourselves for a possible recession. If everything goes down, all the revenue streams that were mentioned earlier a lot of those, I believe, were just projections. You know, if there's a recession and all of a sudden we're not going to see a 698% or whatever it was increase in building permits, we're not going to see an increase in this revenue and that revenue stream. It's so weird to call city government or any government revenue. Like, you know, revenue is like when you make money and you produce a product, and then government doesn't produce. Anyway, it's a sidetrack. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't know what's going to actually happen, right? We can't, for example, in this hearing or any hearing, without a vote of the citizens, change our loss. We can't go and say, let's get 2% loss instead of 1% loss. You know, as far as I can tell, the only thing that we have a control of instantly would be to adjust our millage rate. And so we can also, I guess, change our water rates, but that kind of goes to a separate fund. So I just think at the end of the day, I don't see the issue with adjusting the millage rate. And I don't think I live in quite a nice house as Mr. Young, but I think my increase was something like $15. So that's for like the entire year, I think it was. So that's 2 Whopper meals for me and my wife to go in 1 year. That's the increase that I'm seeing. And I don't know if that's, you know, commensurate with everyone else, but I say we spend, for me, $15 additional on my house, and we insulate ourselves from potential pitfalls of a recession. And that's one of the reasons why I believe it's a good idea to maintain the millage rate where we're at. And the other reason is because if we do hit a recession, you know, 2019, we lowered the millage rate down to 5.74, and then the next year we raised it at 6.250, and it's sat there since 2020. So I'm looking at maintaining the millage rate now so I don't have to come back in 2023 and ask the voters to increase it later. And so that's another thing in the back of my mind. So I'm currently in favor, and I haven't heard any arguments that I felt are compelling significantly enough to change my mind, but I'm in favor of maintaining the millage rate.
Okay, Ms. Marchman?
No, not really. I'm not all that familiar with all these numbers.
Do you have the microphone?
No, I did not. I wasn't planning to speak, but
Oh, I'm
anyway,
sorry.
no, that's okay. I'm not all that savvy with numbers and so forth, but I'm with them in the fact that whatever happens for our constituents, it's going to happen to us too. So it's not like we're doing something for them that's not going to affect us too. So whichever way we go, we've got to pay the same thing that everybody else has to. So, you know, why are we going to do it, change now? And like he said, then next year we got to go back to do something else if we can keep it where it is, and then see where it goes from there.
Okay, all right, thank you. So as I said in the last hearing, when we set a millage rate every year, we do think about the constituents. We think about ourselves as well. And I get contacted by an array of people across the city. And believe it or not a soul has said to me, please let me pay more taxes. But I have had many people say to me, please keep that rate the same, even if I end up paying a little bit more. That was a pretty loud voice, but there was also a number of people who said to me they were on fixed incomes, they were, hit by what they believed were unrealistic or improper assessments. Ms. McPherson talked about what she thought was grossly inflated assessments. What I want to say to the public, and this is very important, your assessments are done by the county. This is not me telling you to go to the county. I'm telling you there's a structure for this. And if your assessment does not agree with what you think it is, you should go and appeal that assessment at the county assessor's office. and that will adjust your tax rate if it is improper. However, if your assessment went up because you truly had an improvement or something impacted the value of your home, there was going to be an increase in the dollar amount of taxes that you paid. Ms. McPherson talked about revenue streams. I think it's important for us to realize that all of the revenue streams she was talking about are very real, but they do not necessarily go toward the same types of expenditures that we are talking about when we talk about the property tax ad valorem millage, which is 6.25 currently. When you talk about lost, that does go toward that, but you see that credit on your actual tax bill. But when you think about SPLOST money, or you think about some of the other building permits, revenues, and things like that, go a little further into the budget. Don't just read the revenue streams. See what's happening with that money. That goes to personnel, that goes to equipment, that goes to offsetting the expenses in that same revenue line item. So I think it's really important to kind of put into perspective how that budget is made. Those are projected revenues, and they are projected expenditures. This year, as Ms. McCoy points out, and I think even Mr. Montahan, we have proposed, this budget proposes a 5% COLA for staff. We are not sure that that is enough. We are still losing people across the city. The budget was proposed at 6.25 mills. If that number becomes anything less than that tonight, there will be a need to go back and adjust the budget. And I don't know where those line items will be adjusted, because we already have turned down $9+ million in requests. We pared that down and got it down to about $2 million that we thought was pretty difficult to say no to, because the responsible thing to do would have been to fund those $2 million. But I was never in favor of raising the millage rate. That was never an idea. But I always thought, and I never said or believed that if we lowered it, we'd be kicking the can down the road. What I do think is that we will have taken 2 steps forward over the last few years and a step back. It is responsible to maintain this millage rate, because if people did not file appeals and they did have inflated prices, values on their homes this year, and next year they decide to appeal those, or there's a downturn in the housing market and all of these assessments begin to fall, we will be in a situation where we have to raise the millage rate again in order to balance a budget moving forward. So as Mr. Young said, I do live in a pretty nice home, and I do have a 22% increase this year myself. I'm not going to propose or suggest that this council lower my taxes this year, because I know the right thing to do is to keep paying that mill of 6.25. Any reduction up here reduces their taxes. Maintaining it also, if they're impacted by assessments, raises the amount of revenue that they will pay out. To me, the responsible thing to do here tonight, the only responsible thing, is to maintain this millage rate, not only for this year, but looking forward to next year's budget, realizing that we don't want to have to raise the millage rate. All right. Is there anybody else? Staff, does anybody have anything? All right, Mr. Carter, I recognize you for a motion.
Thank you, Mayor. And going back to the 2020 increase, when we increased it by $500,000, I must point out it was increased with anticipation of a downturn, which did not occur. We didn't have that downturn. So now we do have an inflationary cycle going on, and I recognize the fact that the city also is facing inflation. And I definitely would not support taking out the raise for the employees of the city. I'm 100% behind that. No other places it can come from besides that. So I'm going to propose that we help out those that are in need, and the city split the $413,500 surplus revenue that they're getting from the property tax. This is above and beyond, because tax assessors just chose to arbitrarily increase the value of someone's house. I know Mine went up. I didn't do any improvements, but it just went up twice, 2 years in a row. But no matter what we do about the millage rate, it's going to affect us no matter what. So I'm going to propose we put the millage rate at 6.0 so that we split the revenue between us and the property tax owners that are being affected by this. This won't help everybody that's stuck on the fixed income low level. Now, there are people on fixed income that have plenty of money. This won't affect them anyway. You know, you could be on fixed income, be rolling in the dough, and you don't think twice about it. But if you're on fixed income and barely making ends meet, you do think twice about it as inflation impacts what you got to pay. So I make a motion to set the millage rate at 6.0.
All right, I have a motion from Mr. Carter to set the millage rate at 6.0. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. McPherson. Is there any discussion? So what I would say, just real quickly, because that was a pretty long-winded, but believe me, I'm recognizing that this is an important point to make. What I would say, though, and Mr. Carter, I'm not asking you a question, so please don't feel like you need to answer it. But if you feel like you had a grossly increased property valuation assessment, did you, Mr. Carter, I'm not asking you a question, I'm just going to say this. Did you file an appeal?
I did.
So if you file an appeal and you also win your appeal and you lower your millage rate, that's pretty significant. I think, I didn't want to ask that question. I'm just saying that it is smart to file an appeal. If you believe that you were assessed at a grossly high assessment, file an appeal. There is regulations for how these assessments are set. They're not arbitrary. There are regulations and they are audited by the state. It is a misunderstanding of the law to think that they just simply go out there and do some blanket assessment across pools of houses. That is not what happens. There is a formula set by law. All right, Mr. Carter, you got, this is discussion.
Yeah. I filed an appeal because I have not improved the property at all. I've not added to the house. I've not put any basement. They had me down for a finished basement, which I don't have. So I
That-
filed an appeal based on that.
So that should
I
disappear.
suspect it was the same thing last year, and that drove up the price. But, yeah, I didn't file it last year, but when they hit me twice in a row, I decided it was time.
Sure.
Tell them, you got some things wrong on my property here. You got it labeled wrong, so let's correct those, and then we'll see how it falls out.
Sure, and Mr. Carter, you live in Carroll County that
I do.
saw an average of 7.35% increase. And so what, you had a much higher increase. You did.
Oh, yeah.
Some people will see a very small number, I mean a tiny number. Mr. Moptan said
Mr.
$15.
Monahan apparently did.
That's right. Some of us is a couple of $100.
Yeah.
So maybe you, I'm not getting into your, okay, let me just see if anybody else has any discussion before any other discussion? Okay, oh, Ms. McPherson.
Yeah, just want to mention if this is something you want to know more about, since we're talking about the millage and tax assessing, at 7 p.m. this morning, this evening, a few doors down at Uncorked is the chief tax assessor for Carroll County at a meeting that I am helping host, but I may not be there at the beginning, and will be explaining to people how all of this is done, how to do an appeal, discounts that you might be eligible for, whether it's senior discounts or anything else from an educational standpoint. And I guess that's it. But I will say this. Listen to the words. Listen to them again on video. Be a critical thinker. Think through them. Look at, the information on the budget. Watch the body language when the hands go up or down. And do remember that elections do have consequences.
If that wasn't political, I don't know what was. I mean, that's not what this is about. So you do pay attention to what you hear. Do pay attention to the words. People are telling you, if I give you a tax cut, you owe me a vote. And if I don't, then you should shame me for doing what I think is absolutely right in the best interest of this city, that I pay as well. All right, all right, hold on, Ms. McCoy.
There was something we used to say when we were looking at federal contracts, what a prudent person would do and what's reasonable. So in my mind, that keeping the millage rate where it is reasonable. lowering it is not reasonable. Raising it is not reasonable given the economic climate. But keeping it where it is reasonable. It is what would a prudent person do? What would an average person on the street do? Is this a reasonable act? So it's hard to make these decisions, and that's why I ran for office. So I know it's not going to be popular. I know I can sit here right now. No one's going to like me for this, but I couldn't with good conscience, looking at the numbers, not say keep it where it is.
Okay. I will call.
Can I say one thing? I'm
All right,
sorry.
Mr. Montana.
Yeah. Listen, folks, I don't like taxes either, okay? All right? We pay a lot of taxes. You own a business, you pay taxes. You personally have to pay taxes. You know, I got to pay payroll taxes. I have to pay taxes. I have to pay for my business, for my employees' taxes, to put away for Social Security. I got to pay that out of my own operating account when I know my employees probably never going to see Social Security. I'm never going to see. I'm paying Social Security taxes and other taxes, and I'm never going to see any of that stuff. I don't like taxes, despise taxes, but I'm paying these taxes too here. Like I told you, I want to get $15 more. I'm going to pay in taxes so I can get 2 less Whoppers this year. Okay, so nobody likes taxes. No one wants to pay taxes, but we're not like the federal government. We can't go deficit spend millions and billions of dollars. We can only budget based upon the revenue that the government brings in via these taxes and fees. So, no, I don't like doing this at all. I don't like to maintain the millage rate. Again, you know, I'm voting to maintain the millage rate because I don't want to have to come back next year and say, y'all, let's raise it up to 6.5. I don't want to do that. So that's why I'm trying to avoid paying taxes by paying a little more now and paying a lot later.
You know, and what is more conservative or responsible than to pay your bills? That's what we're doing here. Paying the city's bills. You were sent up here to make the best decisions for the city, not for yourself, but for the city. Did someone else want to?
I just
All right,
wanted
Ms.
to
Marshall.
say that I think we would be doing our citizens or our constituents a disservice if we gonna sit up here and vote for something, thinking about, well, in my instance, next year, how my vote is gonna go at the poll. If I can sleep at night with the decision that I make, that I think is good for the citizens, if it goes that I'm voted out next year because I felt like I was doing what was right this year, then so be it. I mean, I'd like to be put back in office next year, but I don't think we should sit up here and vote on something this serious, thinking about, am I going to be voted in next year? I don't think that's doing your civic duty as a council member. That's my opinion.
All right, thank you. Okay, so I have a motion from Mr. Carter to set the millage rate at 6.1, a second from Ms.
She's right. Oh.
6.0, I'm sorry, 6.0. Have a motion from Mr. Carter to set the millage rate at 6.0. I have a second from Ms. McPherson. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That motion will fail. Will anybody else like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we adopt a millage rate of 6.250.
I have a motion from Mr. Montahan to maintain the millage rate at 6.25. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. McCoy. Is there any discussion? All right, I'll call the vote. All in favor? All opposed? That motion will carry 3-2. All right. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to C3, 2023 Budget Workshop. Jennifer, would you come up? Okay, go ahead. Would you go ahead and open up the budget workshop? Because we worked on this, what day were we here last?
Last Tuesday, 23rd.
Last Tuesday on the 23rd. And how far did we get in? Do you want to pick up there? Is that where we're going to pick up?
So we thought she would give this summarized presentation, and then I can tell you where we left off when we get to the actual
All
detail.
right, let's do that. Let's go
Okay.
ahead and do this again, the presentation, and then we'll start up where we left off.
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, the total proposed 2023 budget is 42.6 million. As you know, we have all types of funds within the City of Villa Rica's operations. General fund, which is just the general maintenance and operations and services of the city. Your admin, your public safety, your community development, public works, that makes up 45%. That's in your general fund. Your water and sewer fund is 26% of the $42.6 million budget. Solid waste makes up 4%. Stormwater 1%, debt service 6%, our self-funded health insurance fund is 5%, SPLOST is 5%, capital projects is 7%, and hotel motel tax is 1%, and then we have some really small special revenue funds that make up the remaining less than 1% of the $42.6 million budget. Next. As mentioned earlier, when you compare our proposed 2023 budget to 2022's budget, the general fund did have a decrease of around 18%, but that is primarily due to the ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act funding that we received and accounted for the past 2 years. Water and sewer is seeing, or the proposed budget is a 6% increase from last year, or for this current year, and sanitation is a 16% increase. Next. As far as our revenue sources, we proposed this budget with a 6.25 millage rate assumption on the revenue side, $47,000 increase in sales tax, $80,000 increase in occupational tax, $697,000 increase in building permits, $68,000 increase in recreation and Pine Mountain Gold Museum revenues, $32,000 decrease in court fines, and $6 million decrease in the ARPA funds. Next. As far as our water and sewer fund, we are proposing, or this budget is already assuming, the 5% water volume rate increase, which is around $118,000 in revenue. This is approximately 81 cents per month increase for the average customer based on 4,000 gallons a month. We are still in discussions and looking at the operations of the solid waste fund. So we either need to do a rate increase or look at alternatives to cut back services in that fund. And I'm sorry, I skipped over the sewer rate. Right now, the budget that's being proposed, there's no sewer rate increase. It is needed, but right now our current focus is on the water rates. Next. As previously mentioned, we had $16.5 million worth of requests from all departments. That includes additional personnel requests, additional operating requests for new programs or new projects, as well as capital. We had, in the budget, $6.7 million is funded, leaving $9.8 million unfunded. Next. Some items, though, that have been funded on the operating level, as far as expenditures, there's $100,000 contingency. There was a 7% increase in healthcare claims and admin that totaled about $132,000. There was a 77% increase in gasoline and diesel, which was also $132,000. $60,000 for branding, logo, website services that will be Ken will be working on that. $30,000 for a salary study. The last one completed was 2018. $158,700 for various maintenance and repairs of city facilities. $75,000 for Carol Tomorrow contribution. Almost $80,000 for a sponsorship to the crisis response team for an office and paramedic. $56,500 for a parks comprehensive master plan. $50,000 for a parks program consulting firm. Various increases in water and sewer fund operations, and then $151,000 additional for garbage pickup. That's GFL. As far as personnel, you can see personnel salary and benefits total $14.2 million in all funds. The prior year was $13 million, which that's around a 9% increase. The general fund makes up 78% of that. Water and sewer make up 18%, sanitation 3%, and stormwater 1%. As far as additional personnel, there were not any additional full-time personnel proposed in this budget. There were some splash pad attendants placed in the budget around $20,000, and the reclassification of a P&Z specialist to a P&Z admin, including benefits of around $10,000. As mentioned, the pay adjustments is being proposed a 5% cost of a living adjustment for all employees. That's around $500,000 for all funds, and that includes the benefits, the FICA, Social Security, and Medicare that goes along with that, as well as to correct some salary compression issues within the police department at around $50,000. Next. Our self-funded insurance fund is for our healthcare and admin fees for administering the healthcare claims. There was a 7% projected increase in those administration and claims. The budget is estimated at around 90% of maximum claims. Our consultant tells us, based upon our trends and how our plan is written, what our maximum claims would be. We, in the past, have been using 90% of maximum claims, and thank goodness we haven't reached that percentage, so we still feel good about keeping it at 90%. The 10% remains as savings within each of the respective funds and does not get transferred into the self-funded insurance plan. The current cash balance is over $1 million, so we're doing good there. So the total budget for the self-funded insurance is $2.3 million. As far as capital budget, try to condense everything into one slide. As far as how much we're spending in capital is $5.9 million. $1 million of that is in the general fund, and it's listed over there to the right. What those items are is our match to a grant that we received for the downtown redevelopment. $250,000 as a starting figure for a new municipal complex, which would be the design and engineering. A data center cluster server replacement of $55,000. To relocate the car wash to Powell Park, $40,000. The V-Plex PA system soundproofing acoustic panels of $40,000. Outdoor pickleball court at Powell Park, $45,000. HVAC replacements at Gold Dust Aerobic Room and V-Plex at $28,000. And Fullerville security system at $5,000. That's all within the general fund. Then, of course, we have capital projects within water and sewer that have funding sources of user fees, GFA loan, and ARPA. In the water and sewer, we have four vehicles, two of them being service trucks and distribution and collection of $130,000, and then wastewater having an F550 crane truck at $65,000 and an F450 crane truck at $55,000. A lot of water projects going on at $2.7 million, wastewater projects at $1.9 million, and distribution had some pump replacements at $16,000. Next. Proposed capital, as far as SPLOST, we have 3 buckets right now. We still have money remaining in our 2015 Carroll SPLOST. Around $816,000 would be is programmed to be for resurfacing and sidewalks. Recreation would be using $53,000 of that to replace doors at Gold Dust. The 2016 Douglas SPLOST has $1.2 million programmed for resurfacing and sidewalks, $320,000 for water and sewer infrastructure, Public safety, we were able to put two specific items within the request that the PD had. I believe it was 8 handheld emergency radios at $26,000 and a dual-purpose K9 at $16,000. And we will still have some undesignated, unprogrammed funds of around $28,000 that we can allocate for some public safety projects. Recreation, we have Connors Road Park at around $727,000, and the same for recreation, some undesignated project funds for recreation of $158,000. Fire and EMS for Douglas County of $235,000. Then the final splost is the 2021 Carroll splost. We have 3.9 remaining for Punkintown Road. Resurfacing and sidewalks, we like to budget at least $500,000 a year to add to our resurfacing and sidewalks budget. And then recreation, we have an item that was asked for the turf plane infield lips, laser grade, and finished drag infield improvements to our fields at $75,000. And that completes my presentation.
Okay, so that's the same presentation you made at the last, at the last workshop. So, council, do you have any questions on that before we move into where we left off? Okay, I'll let Sarah pick up right there.
All right. So last time we had started going department by department so that the council could ask any questions they had of the department heads that are here. So we ended with grounds maintenance on page 96. I think the first question up was about overtime, and I think Bobby is here to answer that.
Hello, Bobby.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We did some reorganization.
Just a second. Set me on what page it is.
Page 96.
Page 96. All right. Go ahead.
We did some reorganization, as y'all probably know, during the year, and the grounds group ended up being kind of a hybrid group to help with recreation and all the grounds. The overtime is spent with every single event we have downtown. 4th of July event, all tournaments, baseball, basketball, softball. These guys help cross over on all that. And last year, the 10-month window, we were right at 25,000 if you extrapolate it out. And we just bumped it a little bit more to cover it.
Okay.
And we also got jumping out of grounds into solid waste. Our solid waste supervisor now used to be the grounds supervisor. He also helps with the downtown events, and one of his guys also helps do that. But that's why we bumped the grounds overtime, but the way we did.
Okay, and I don't remember who asked that question.
Ms. Leslie did.
Ms. McPherson did. Okay, so what I'm going to say is This budget is available online for anybody to take a look at, and during the week that has passed since we did this last workshop, I know that there has been a lot of questions back and forth from council members to staff. So I'm going to cut right to the chase and see if any council members have any questions. And Ms. McPherson, if you want to follow up with Bobby at all, and then we'll try to take it from there, because I know a lot of these questions probably already got answered in the last week, but I don't know that all of them have. Ms. McPherson?
Yeah, what drew attention to that one was the fact that it was up 173%. Anytime anything jumps like that, we're going to go, why? And it was a total of 30,000. So it was one, I guess, went up 19,000 from last year. But what is helpful, so I've now written the notes out to the side, is some of the budget items do have some notes out there that do assist us. So probably when something like that happens in the future, if it's due to reorganization, or it may just say used for, boom, 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 July 3, downtown events, I may still want to know a little bit of the breakdown on where the bulk of that overtime goes, but your explanation helped a lot.
The 4th of July celebration, for instance, we had probably 10 guys working from 16 to 20 hours overtime each.
Yeah, they were there a really long time
Of course, we had
that
a really, really nice celebration too.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a really big deal. And when they do basketball or things like that, is that because going inside to do some sort of cleanup?
Well,
or-
the grounds guys also help mostly with the outdoor events, field maintenance,
That makes
dragging in fields, lining off fields, helping Tracy's group cut grass at times.
Would it involve soccer days?
I believe
all?
so, yes,
I
ma'am.
wasn't sure. Okay.
Okay, all right. So where are we at now? Anybody got any other questions in this, in the grounds maintenance? Okay, we're gonna move on to Parks and Recreation. Anyone have any questions here? Okay. I'm just flipping through myself. What about Parks and Recreation Athletics? It's a 10% change from 2022. Okay? We have these department heads here, right? All right. Programs and events? Anybody? Okay. Library. Any questions on the library? Okay. Any remain unanswered, I guess, is my point. Okay. Let's move on to the senior center. Any questions on senior center? All right. This one has mostly, looks like reductions from, so it was only a 5% overall increase. Okay, let's move on to enterprise funds. Sounds fun. I didn't say fund. Sounds fun. All right, stormwater. I see that department head's here. No, is he? Any questions here? Ms. McCoy?
I do have a question about this one. If I did my math right, it seems they've only used like 38% of their budget for 83% of the fiscal year. Oh, I
So
think
in-
it was the contract.
Right, in the professional
figured.
line item, we had budgeted for consultants to come help make this a utility, a stormwater utility, and that has not been done yet, so we're gonna leave that in, fund balance for that fund to be used in the future.
Okay, yeah, after I said that, I had a note about that.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm good.
I see it. All right. Okay, utility administration. Anybody? Ms. McPherson?
No, I was just going to say, lest you think I didn't have any questions, Jennifer was gracious enough to spend quite a bit of time on the phone with me yesterday as we worked through a number of them, so I really only have something at the very end
Okay.
that goes backwards,
All right,
further back.
Let me still take it, but that was my point. I knew that there had been a good bit of work being done in the last week. Okay, and I understand most of it was clarifications as opposed to really questions, but that's good. That helps to save time. Okay, that's in utility administration. Let's move on to wastewater. Anybody got any questions here in wastewater? Okay. Let's move on to water. Any questions in water? Okay. Mr. Carter?
Does this have an increase in it?
The water is a 25% change from 2022. Is that let's see what we're looking at.
So yes, there is a 5% rate increase on the revenue side for the volume portion of the rate. But what we're looking at here is the expenses.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to distribution and collection. Any questions here? All right, this is a 1% change from 2022. Solid waste. Any questions here?
Yeah,
Mr. Carter?
we had asked them to develop a different procedure for picking up the waste to save money. How are we doing on that, Bobby?
Mr. Carter, I'm in the process of rerouting the entire city, incorporating all the new prospective subdivisions that are getting ready to come on board. We have to allot for those as well. I'm about halfway through with it.
And what kind of procedure are we going to use on this?
Well, it depends on what the numbers add up to be. You end up with the the total number of customers that actually pay the fee, and then you divvy that up into 5 days. And then you make some seat of the pants adjustments to it to hope you get it in the right, you project it in the right area. I will say that a couple of years from now, if the economy stays to where we add all these customers, we'll either have to go to every other week or have to add more personnel because you just can't physically cover it. So I'm working on it right now.
Yeah, every other week was one of the proposals, yeah. Okay.
All right. Any other questions here in solid waste?
I had a question
Ms. McCoy?
about the CDL training. Is it done virtually or locally? Because I didn't see a travel bud.
No, it's not. It's done in Beaufort.
Oh, okay.
It's like a 2-night stay, I think, for each. And believe me, we researched every single place we could find, and they were the only game in town.
Okay. I was just curious because there's no money in travel in the budget.
Yeah, Jennifer and I are looking at that, and I'm wondering if the 5,000 that went to education and training should be split between the two lines, so we can make that change.
Okay. That was my only
Yeah,
concern.
in my opinion, we paid way too much, but we didn't have a choice.
No, that's fine. I just was curious because there was no travel.
So, Bobby, didn't they do that, or don't they do that out at West Georgia Tech?
They do, Mayor, for a Class A, which is a tractor trailer license. We obviously don't have any tractor trailers, so you'd go for a Class B.
Okay.
And the only place that we could find that did Class B training was in Beaufort.
Okay. All right. I heard you say that, but I do remember seeing those tractor trailers out there, and I
Yes,
thought
sir.
that they certainly were training for that, but I didn't realize there was 2 classes, see?
So that means everybody's having to send them down there if the county needs them, if,
Well, in the past, some of the county transportation, bus transportation departments will help train your people for a nominal fee. I don't know if Carroll does it or not, but I know my son got his in Bartow County probably 15 years ago. Because they have to train, if they're short of drivers, they have to train people to, they can do it in-house if they got a certified trainer. But we
Are
just
bus
did.
drivers Class B?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's what you need?
Yes,
So
sir.
that could be an option for you to look at.
it'd be nice maybe to network with the other local governing bodies and see, or really staff, not the governing bodies, with staff and what are they doing?
Well, I'm real clear that there is a massive shortage of bus drivers.
Well, we would be tickled to death if we had every single employee we had a Class B. Because you never know. If you get 2 people out, you're driving, and your 2 drivers happen to be Class Bs and they're out, you're stuck. So.
Okay. It's worth following up on, but it wouldn't surprise me if you couldn't get them to do training right now, because they need to be training people who will be driving that bus in the morning and in the afternoon. And as far as I'm understanding, there is a massive shortage, not just here, but all around for school bus drivers. All right, so there's a wrap-up portion here that's called Other Departments. Do we have any questions in here? This takes up some of the prisoners, fire, animal control, some of the debt service, which has nothing in it. Just transfers. This is some housekeeping stuff here. Okay. Any questions in this section, council? Okay. Let's move down to other funds. Federal seizures. There's almost nothing after this. Page 139. Ms. McPherson, you said you had something toward the end. Is it in this section or is it in personnel?
No, it's going backwards, yeah.
Okay.
I would like to propose, we have the equivalent of 2 positions that are empty right now, and that is tourism manager, and it's 2 part-times put together to make a full-time, and half of that was in tourism and half half of it was in Main Street, and I would propose that we remove those positions. And I don't know, Tom, if you want to share a little bit about some of the things y'all are looking into that was being done by tourism, branding, that sort of thing, I'm not sure exactly what all it is, except that I know you've worked on something.
Staff has started looking into how we're gonna move forward after, Shannon and Sharon left, but we haven't finished the review. I think we're meeting again Friday afternoon to talk about it, so we're gonna bring something to you here, hopefully before we get to the end of the budget process.
Okay, so I'll still put that proposal forward, but we're not voting on the budget tonight, so it doesn't have to be decided tonight, so we'll get some additional information that would still, but anyway, that's what I'm proposing. Those are vacant right now, and that we leave them vacant at this time, and especially till we get that information to see if maybe we don't necessarily have to have a tourism person on board. It could be that with consulting with others, we can do it. I'll wait to hear what y'all have.
Okay. So there'll be a difference between removing the positions and just not filling the positions. But you're right, we're not going to make any decisions here tonight. But you're going to look at what would be the staff recommendation. Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? All right. Anybody else? Okay. Where are we at next? Are we going to skip down to personnel? Is that okay?
Well, I mean, if you're going to skip, I mean.
No, I don't have to.
Well, I just had a question about the capital projects general fund. I have one thing in there, so
Oh, going
I'm not trying to
backwards.
get. Oh well, personnel is after capital funds. Though.
Oh,
I'm
well, let's
saying
get
before
to
you
it.
get to
There's
personnel. that's what I'm
cemetery.
trying to say.
All right, let me go. Cemetery technology. The Carroll County SPLOST. Any questions here? Any questions on the Douglas County SPLOST? These are the line items. Capital projects, page 145. Is this the one you want to look at?
Yeah,
That's
not the
LMIG.
roads. It's the general fund ones.
Okay. Next page.
Yeah. So I mean, what I was noticing here is that $40,000 to relocate the car wash to Powell Park. So, I guess the first thing is, where's the current car wash? Why do we need to relocate it? And is there a better place than Powell Park to put it? Those are my three questions.
Okay. That question actually came up in the last one.
Okay,
So
and I
let's
wasn't
let
here.
them go
So,
ahead and.
sorry.
Who wants to talk about it? You?
All right.
Tracy? All right, come on up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Yes, sir.
So the old car wash is behind PD here, where we're gonna demo the old buildings and clean that whole area up. And we're hoping to make parking there for, all the events that's going on, and additional PD parking, and just clean that whole area up, since that we built the new rock bins behind the Avante building, and we're proposing to do the car wash. It's just like a truck wash for the heavy equipment and stuff, to get the garbage trucks and whatnot to clean that stuff off. We thought behind Powell Park, the old concession restroom area there, it's kind of good spot out of sight, got good sewer, water, drainage there and whatnot, and we've already got the plumbing, sewer capacity there, which would save a lot of money to put that there. And that we're going to redo the restrooms there also for the pickleball courts, and kind of tie everything into one project there, that we could save a lot of money. And we're going to do all that work in-house and probably save $60,000-$70,000 or more of what they would charge outside.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yep.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
In relation to that, it only makes sense to really get this stuff out of downtown anyway, because the property in your immediate downtown, that is not the highest use of downtown property. You have the mill. The only thing I'd say in regards to the parking is just be careful about what we do there, because of what the vision of what we want to see happen there with our Renaissance program, our LCI. Is that going to be the best use, or is that going to be part of the use? That's all.
Okay. Anything else under capital projects from general fund? Ms. McCoy.
So did I understand correctly, there's going to be a car wash next to the pickleball court? I'm just curious.
Yes, ma'am. It's basically a concrete slab with one wall, and there'll be a back wall on it. They really will not see it from the pickleball courts. It's just somewhere they can pull their equipment in during the day after they get done working, rinse it off. But it'll be nice, and it won't look. Yes, we're going to make it look really good. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Anybody else? All right, this is capital projects from the general fund, pages 147 and 148. All right, let's move on to self-funded insurance. Any questions here in the self-funded insurance?
Okay.
All right. What is this Villa Rica Public
Vil-
Facilities?
Yes, Villa Rica
Agency?
Public Facilities Authority. So this
Alright.
is our bond payment.
Okay.
And it came up last week about how much the principal balance
Yes.
is, 31,880,000.
Wait, how much?
31 million, excuse me.
Yeah.
31,880,000.
So when I saw that, it reminded me again of, we've had this, I know Ms. McCoy misspoke a little bit earlier when she said 20 years, but we took this bond out in 09. And at that 08, 09, and it was what, $32 million then? And today it's $31.8 million. So how does that make you feel about responsible payments? Doesn't make me feel too good. I think now we're on a much better track to do it. We refinanced this bond earlier this year. We're paying much higher amounts in the short run so that we can save in the long run, but it saves us interest. So that goes to the point about maintaining a healthy general fund so that you're not having to borrow money. You saw earlier we're borrowing those millions of dollars from GFA. Now all of that is water and sewer money, which is in the enterprise funds. It's not really directly related to what we're doing, outside of the water and sewer enterprise funds, but it still is important to try every way you can to save the taxpayer money, and you're saving them money by putting reserves into your general fund. So here we are, we still owe $31,800,000, nearly $32 million. What is that, 14 years later? So that means we paid $200,000 off in 14 years or something like that. I don't have the exact number. All right, anybody got any questions on this debt service? All right, we can move on down to personnel. Is there any questions in here?
I already did mine on personnel.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Okay, we've reached the end of the budget. Is there any follow-on, any questions from anything that we've already gone over, or something that came up as a result of the time that's passed between last budget workshop and this one? Any housekeeping? Nobody? Okay. Let's see where we're at on my agenda here. So we're going to have a budget public hearing. So is there anyone, I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in the public hearing portion of our meeting regarding this budget? If you'll come up, state your name and address for the record, and then we'll give you 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Michael Young, 9634 Coastal Point Drive, Villa Rica. Yeah, I went through all 169 pages line by line, and you can nitpick this and nitpick that, but overall, I didn't have any problems. The city did a good job on projecting growth and what's going to be required to service that growth in essential services, things like that. But I didn't see a whole lot in quality of life, the Parks and Rec area. It looks like there's a huge increase, 32% Parks and Rec, but that's moving the pickleball court and Connors Road Park. And a dog park is going to help some people, but not a lot of people. We're limited to what we could do with that anyway, and we're limited on the funds for SPLOST money, so you have to spend it there. But the pickleball court was about the only quality of life Parks and Rec change, where we need a new gym. We need more parking at Gold Dust Park because we put a splash pad in there, so we need more parking there. we need that concession stand on water and sewer instead of septic. So there's some quality of life things there that are less easy to determine. And I know there's no room in the budget, but as the year goes on, things change. This project comes in under budget. That project is eliminated because you're going to do something else. As money becomes available, I would like us to look at quality of life, because we know we're going to add thousands of people next year. Not a lot, but 2,000 or 3,000 people are coming to the city. We need to keep up with that nebulous quality of life.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay. I'll close the public hearing on the budget, and we will move into governing body. So I'm going to let David talk about this, but let me just say, the reason you see the intergovernmental agreement back on this agenda, even though it was on last week's agenda, is because after we asked you all to review and approve the IGA that we had cleaned up, it turned out that there was a change in the original body that was discovered the next day. And so we wanted to go back and actually, I'll let David talk about this, but we ended up meshing these two together so that it would be in the same format that the county had sent us back on August the 8th. And we have done that now. I think that the changes are minimal, but I'll let David talk about that, because the council is just now actually able to see this entire document. But we do need to vote on this tonight, so we'll take whatever time we need to go through it. So David, go ahead.
I think what the mayor said was exactly correct. The format has changed. Very few of the details have. The format that y'all voted on last week was really in two parts. It was the body of a document and then an appendix or an Exhibit B that was attached to it. The county's version of it incorporated everything into one document, this is now that format where we've combined the body and Exhibit B into one document. Very little has changed in the substantive portions. The only thing that I would point out to you that is a big change is in section Section 5.11, and that has changed in that it previously said that the county's participation in the TAD would be limited to either 30 years or the final payment on the bond, whichever came first. That has been changed just based on some internal discussions. It now simply says that the county's participation in the TAD will end when the bond is paid off, period. The thought is that the bond will clearly be paid off before the end of 30 years, but we don't know that for sure. And the county's participation needs to stay in place until the bond is paid off, as does the school boards and as does the cities. We all need to have some skin in the game till the bond's paid off.
Well, that's the only assurance that the bondholder has, because we're not obligating the general funds of any of these authorities, the cities, the schools, or the county, to anything outside of this increment additional development within the TAD.
Right.
So that's why that has to be like that, because this is the only assurance the bondholder has that he will get paid. I say he, but I'm sure it's going to be some large organization. Okay.
Yep. So that's the only substantive change.
All right.
It's worth noting.
Council, I'll give you whatever time you need to flip through this and see if there's any questions that you have. I think that David is right. That is the only substantive thing that's different from what you already voted on. but this format is different. It now incorporates that Exhibit B into the body of the document itself, so there is no Exhibit B anymore. It's now part of the document, and that's the format that the county wanted us to do. So, anybody have any questions at this point?
Okay.
All right,
This
Mr.
this is
Carter.
only between Villa Rica and Carroll County. The school board is not involved at this point.
There will be one prepared that will be significantly similar to this for the school board, but I think the first step is getting the county to approve it. And then we'll prepare essentially the same thing for the school board, minus the provisions about the fire station.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Carter, thank you. Anybody else? Does anybody need any more time? Just indicate by raising your hand and I'll, okay. Mr. Mecklin, have you prepared a motion for this one?
I'll be glad to read one off.
Okay. Let's, take a minute to be ready to do that, and I'll ask you for something in just a moment.
No, I'm ready. I mean,
Okay. All right, so let me get you to read off a motion, and I'll ask someone to make that.
All right, the motion will be, I move to approve the intergovernmental agreement relating to the East Side Tax Allocation District attached to this motion with Carroll County.
I'll make that motion.
I only have a couple of questions. When you did this the last time, I think you may have made some provision for the mayor and city clerk to make signatures. Is that going to be necessary here?
Okay, well, I'll add on, and I further move that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to execute the agreement.
Okay, that was,
Okay.
all right. Mr. Carter, will
I'll
you make
make
that
the
motion?
revised motion.
Okay. All right, so I have a motion as stated by the city attorney, made by Mr. Carter. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Ms. McPherson. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor? All right, that is unanimous. Thank you all very much for that. Let's see, where are we at now? We're at the end. Does anybody have any comments they'd like to make? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion from Ms. Marchman to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. McCoy.